Have you ever seen a UFO? What if the most unusual thing about that encounter happened much later? What would you do if you saw a strange woman dressed entirely in black staring through your window? Today, we test the believability of the women in black.
Welcome to Believing the Bizarre,
where we dive into the unknown and the unusual
and tell you whether or not we find it believable.
That is right. It's another Tuesday. We got another creepy episode. I'll be honest. I've spent 3 days researching this. Every time it's late at night, there's no light on except for the computer screen smacking me in the face with the blue light.
That's the best time.
But I get creeped out.
Yeah.
And that does, let me be honest. That does not happen every time we do an episode.
No.
There are episodes that we do that I think are creepy, that I think are interesting, but not every time. Oh, there's some that are garbage. But not every time I'm researching do I get creeped out.
No, and Tyler watches these like horror movies where like people are turning inside out all the time. He's like, I don't feel anything.
All the time. They just go in and then out and then in and then out. Back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But 3 consecutive nights of researching this, I got creeped out. I'm just being honest. Just being honest.
I could see it. I think the consecutiveness of it, the continuity.
Yeah, like it's those moments where it's like you look over your shoulder for no other reason just to look.
You see just a female figure standing there in a suit.
I got a window right to my left, which is how I saw the blood moon, by the way. Did you catch that? The lunar eclipse?
Mm-mm.
I went out. I looked and I saw it was halfway, because you could see it with the naked eye very well. Not with my expensive camera, just with the naked eye. But I went outside and I saw that. But anyways, I felt exposed, dude. Like I felt like I was gonna see someone down
just
the
like,
street.
Just a woman in the street, and you look back and she's gone.
I told Charlie it was very much like Black Eyed Kids for me in terms
creepy.
of just the creepiness, because they just show up. But anyway, let me plug this first. 2 sources, because everything's pretty much from these 2 sources. Mysterious Universe, which then led me to a book that I have on Kindle, which is called Women in Black, The Creepy Companions of the Mysterious MIB by Nick Redfern.
Another semicolon, down with the patriarchy.
Yes. And yes, very much so like how we do the Lake Michigan Triangle instead of the Bermuda. We are doing the Women in Black before the Men in Black.
I will have an RC, thank you very much.
We are, what'd you say? We're the budget brand?
We're the budget brand.
We are the great value of paranormal podcasts. And that's not saying the women are less. It's just we always do the topic lesser known.
Yeah.
The road less traveled. But I do have to, just to preface, it's like it kind of hinges on knowing what the Men in Black are besides a 1995 film starring Tommy Lee Jones and
a
Will
very
Smith.
good 1995 film.
Oh yeah. But let me just touch on that just so we're all caught up to speed. And then we'll learn about Women in Black together, because they have 0 representation on the interweb.
Yeah.
Like 0. None. Dunzo. Thank God for this book. Men in Black. So essentially Men in Black are people in quotes, loosely
people. Loosely people.
Loosely, they're not wound up. They're just loose.
And not in a binder.
Flopping around. They're dressed in all black suits, expressionless, toneless, very limited recognizable facial features, and they often show up when a witness has experienced something supernatural, very, very often related to aliens, alien activity, and UFOs.
Can I say something really quick?
Yeah.
It's, okay, so they're probably going to get into this, but they're tied to time travelers, and they wear all black suits because those are kind of a catch-all for the 1900s. Just wanted to say that really quick.
There is ties to time traveling, absolutely, and that's true. You can't be wearing skinny jeans if you're Men in Black.
Well, you don't want to be too, like, oh, that's totally the 80s.
Because if you get caught...
Mm-hmm. In the 60s, or even the 2000s. Yeah.
What about slim fit suits? Did they wear slim fit suits back then?
It
makes me think of that meme where it's like, it just shows the feet of somebody wearing like a Sam's Club, like khaki pants. And it's like, if this is your lawyer, you're going to jail. I just love that so much. But anyway, yeah, that is correct.
Were you going to touch on that in like a whole theory thing? I'm sorry.
No.
That's something that I think is so fascinating. I just kind of...
I was not going to mention it on the Men in Black. There is a little bit of that. Well, no, actually, I'll just say this now because I don't think it's in here. It was used for the quiz, which is on Patreon, which you can check out on our Patreon. There was a potential woman in black that was caught on it's called The Circus. It's a Charlie Chaplin film. And they claim that the promo for that film caught a woman in black. It was like a woman that was like dodging the cameras and she was like doing her best to not get caught on film. And her black outfit just kind of stood out and looked like she was on a cell phone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Or an earpiece or something.
Something. Time travel. The Men in Black can go from very eerie and unusual to literally demanding and threatening you to either stay quiet about what you saw, forget about what you saw, or stop investigating what you're looking into. Not saying that anything I do is valuable, but that's also in the back of my head, right? Like I'm researching intently about this topic and it's just like thinking like, it's like if you put that out there, what comes back, right? So it's like, imagine you're researching something and it actually draws that something.
I remember I had the same thought when I did Black Eyed Kids for another podcast, and you had that same thought when you're doing it for this podcast.
It's just creepy.
Yeah.
It's just creepy. And we've talked about how like the attic and stuff, but that's neither here nor there. Some people say that these are government agents that are dedicated to kind of keeping alien activity hush hush.
Hush.
And others say due to their very odd appearance and their uncanny ability to kind of pop up out of nowhere that the Men in Black themselves are aliens.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference one way or the other on Men in Black?
Yes.
What is it?
I think they're aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do just kind of show up.
And they've been described in so many strange ways outside of what a human is.
Yeah.
Like like a blob in a suit, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They, and we will be doing an episode on this, I'm assuming one day.
One day, Men in Black.
I think you should take that one. They're also tied to black Cadillacs, I guess.
Yeah, well.
If they're gonna drive in style.
Nice ass car, right?
Yeah. But this episode is not about Men in Black. It is about women in black.
Can I mention something really quick?
Yeah.
So, you know how you said that high strangeness was a word used in this book?
Yes.
I think I know why. That I thought of it for the backrooms.
Okay.
Because I heard that on the Men in Black episode of last podcast.
What?
Which I think one of their sources was
this
Nick
book.
Redford.
Wow.
Not this book, but another book he did.
That is full circle.
Yes.
Full circle. So who are the women in black? This is a quote pulled directly from the book. So this is coming from Redfern. Quote, while much has been written on the sinister and occasionally deadly actions of the Men in Black, very little has been opened on the subject of their equally bone-chilling companions, the women in black. Make no mistake, the women in black are all too real, and they are as ominous, predatory, and dangerous as their male counterparts. Unquote.
Predatory is a good
I
word.
know. He is a writer, so
yeah.
It makes sense. So there's gonna be, I think I have 5, I don't know. I do this late at night. Some of these are going to be me kind of telling the story. I know the last 2 are going to be pulled like kind of like a personal encounter. I mean, this entire episode, like I said, there's not a lot about them. Everything, it's like 98% Men in Black. Mm-hmm. And then there's like little crumbs left for the women in black. So a lot of this is going to be pulling information from personal encounters, which I love.
I wonder how much of that is underestimating women.
Probably a lot.
You know, or they just like I don't see them as a threat, so I'm not going to write it down.
Yeah,
I wonder if that's a thing.
There's so many different avenues that like,
which I'm not saying is right. I'm just saying I wonder if that's what it is.
Like I hate to use this language. I know that you looked up what it is supposed to be, but a lot of people thought they were like just gypsies. Romani. Some people think it's just like creepy, weird women being weird women and not taking it seriously.
And that's. I'm gonna say that's messed up.
But the men get to have their own movie with Will Smith.
And Tommy Lee Jones. Although I think there is a woman in black in the second one or the third one.
She's the one with the cat.
No, yeah, she's the morgue person.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Mortuary.
No.
Mortician.
She holds bricks together. Mortician, yeah.
Yes, mortician.
I was doing a stabbing motion.
I couldn't tell. I thought you were doing a cross.
No, she's cutting a body in my head.
It's Orion's belt.
Yes.
But similar to the male counterparts, like what he said, very odd, very unsettling, dressed completely in black attire, seemed to pop up out of nowhere after an unusual event. Apparently in the mid-1960s, there were a lot of reports of women in black outfits roaming around towns and only specifically bothering people who claimed to have UFO experiences. And it was reported that these women would almost be like a statue and just be peering inside the windows of homes of these people. So if you were making it known that you thought that there was some type of paranormal activity, UFO activity specifically, then you would just find these women just like stone-faced staring through your window at you. Which I don't want to say makes sense, but it's something that we've talked about before, where it feels like in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, UFOs were just bumping.
Yeah.
So it almost makes sense now, because it's like, since the boom of the internet, UFOs they don't feel as prevalent. Like, I know that there's a hearing happening right now, and it's just, like, all this stuff has been revealed, but it definitely seems like the 50s through the 70s were like prime time to see UFOs. So it makes sense then why so many of these stories we're going to be covering are from that time period, but also because of how, I mean, women still aren't treated equally, but especially during that time, like, I could see why it was kind of shoved to the back.
Sorry, what were they wearing? Were they wearing suits? Or were they wearing like black dresses?
Some of them in the stories that we're going to get to, sometimes it's like a blouse. Okay. Sometimes it's like an all black coat. But typically it's like either olive or very pale skin and very, very, very black hair. Sometimes eyebrows, sometimes no eyebrows.
Interesting.
This was one thing I thought was interesting before we get into the encounters, because I'm so excited to get to these encounters. Apparently, the women in black, because the men in black are, you commented on this during the quiz, but apparently the women in black were tied to the Mothman experience in Point Pleasant. Apparently, after that incident, women dressed in black started showing up at the houses of people who claimed to see Mothman, harassing them, but under the guise that they were part of the Census Bureau to get them to open the door and give them information. But when people started reporting on these women, they came out and said, yeah, there's no one from the Census Bureau out there right now.
Interesting. That's crazy. Like, would you feel violated?
I don't know. You know, it's like, I feel like today people are like, we're so untrusting of people in authority in this country, the United States. I'm only speaking for the United States here. I don't want to speak for you. I know there's listeners from other countries. I don't trust
authority at all.
But that's the thing. It's like, if somebody knocked on your door and was like Census Bureau, I think probably more than half of the people in this country would be like, that's a scam.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a scam. It's like...
Yeah, they send you a letter. That's all they do.
I think we're in the top percentage of just like countries that don't trust authority figures
is that
or
a real
politicians. No, I actually saw it in an email I got today at work.
Oh, so that's a scam.
No, it's not a scam. But anyway, I'm excited. Let me do a big scroll. The big scroll. I got 5. I got 5 encounters with the women in black. Are you ready? So this is our first of 5 encounters with the women in black. Are you ready? Again, from Mysterious Universe in Red Fern's novel.
I am enthralled.
They are chronological.
Thank God.
Thank God. And we're starting in the 50s, specifically 1952. And this story is coming to us from Truman Bethurham. So in 1952, Truman claimed to have experienced a UFO while in the desert of Nevada. And he was on this 2,000-foot high mountain in Moapa. Does that sound right? Moapa?
Sure, yeah.
Sounds good. Valley. Moapa Valley. And apparently he went into some sort of like a mental trance.
Okay.
And on
purpose?
I don't think it was on purpose. Or maybe it's just a lack of air. 2,000 feet.
Yeah.
Up. Or oxygen, not air. But you know what I mean. But he claimed that in this altered state of mind, that aliens suddenly manifested right before his eyes. And behind these aliens, was a traditional UFO flying saucer. Like the kind of flying saucer you picture in your head.
Pie plate.
Yes, it is the pie plate. The upside, yeah. The aliens were about 4 to 5 feet in height, and they looked humanish, but just off. He could tell they weren't human, but there was just like that eerie, like humanish quality to it.
They looked a little Italian.
What?
A little Italian.
I don't know. Are you saying Italians don't look human?
Now I've put myself into a pickle.
I see you have. I've yeah. No, not quite Italian. Just not quite human. You're Italian, so I guess you can say that.
Yeah.
But, and they claim to be from a distant planet.
Italy.
Yeah. It was called Clarion.
Oh.
Are you familiar?
Not quite.
Not quite. You never been there? You're
No.
not taking that cruise there.
Only my meditations.
And their captain, the captain of the pie ship that took them to Nevada, was Aura Rains. That was first and last name. Aura Rains.
Oh, they have first and last names.
And she was described as, yeah, they have middle name. They're not there yet. Personal wise.
I'm just interested.
She was described by Truman as very beautiful, an Italian goddess. But that was the extent of the initial meeting. But for months after this initial encounter, Truman's relationship with his wife started straining because he continually left his house in the dead of night, went to the deserts of Nevada, and met up with Aura Rains.
Oh, they kept talking to each other?
In remote places.
A long-distance relationship, if you will.
Yeah, and the intimacy of the relationship led some people to later hear the story and think it was a hoax, as if the materializing aliens and the ship was all good.
Yeah.
It's just like, all right, I believe in aliens, but you telling me you hooked up with an alien? As if Antonio Villas-Boas doesn't exist. My man out in Brazil, but I guess they probably didn't know.
Plowing them fields.
Oh God, he didn't plow the fields for keeping it 100. But yeah, it was assumed that they got pretty close. Let's just leave it at that. There's kids listening. Yeah, they had some adult time. But there was one encounter that Truman had that was very different, very odd, and not intimate at all with Aura. He thinks it was almost as if Aura was undercover in this moment, which is also kind of in the vein of the Woman in Black, like trying to get something out of you in disguise, trying to, I don't want to say put you in a difficult situation, but let's get into the story. So this happened at the witching hour of 3 a.m. Truman and his work friend, Whitey, were
It's an older name. That's an older name.
They were finishing up a late shift and decided to head to an all-night diner in Glendale, Nevada.
Okay.
For a bite to eat. Whitey happened to be one of the few people that Truman talked to about his stories about Aura. I think over time it all got out. Like when I'm saying that people started thinking it was fake, I don't think that's in this moment. Like in this moment that I'm telling you right now, I think it was a little bit more hush-hush.
Gotcha.
Just like, you know, the closer work friends that you gossip with around the water cooler. And I don't even know if he told his wife. Things were getting strained.
Yeah, I feel like you probably wouldn't if it was having a semi-affair.
Yeah, he's like, I have to
water the plants
and get some gas
and take out the all-night diner trash.
Do my taxes. I'll be back sometime. I don't know.
For a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone for a long time. Don't worry. So I think the whole people thinking it was a hoax is later.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty tight-knit group right now. But Whitey was one of the people that knew about it. And they're the bros. They're going to get some diner food at 3 a.m. So they walk in. They're drinking their coffee. They're just talking about work or whatever. And they notice that a pair of people walk in. And almost immediately, Whitey got this feeling in his stomach that something was just completely off and wrong. And he looked. Based on what he saw, he nudged Truman and said, "That's her, isn't it?" And Truman nodded and was actually shocked to see her under these circumstances. And by that, I mean in public, not under the Nevada moon. But they watched as Aura and this very creepy looking man, equally as short, walked in and they sat at a booth by a window. Aura had a black beret, black sunglasses, a black blouse, and black boots on.
Oh, okay. Dressed to kill.
Yes. So Truman composed himself, thinking like, okay, this is strange. I'm going to see what's going on. And he walked over to their table. Meanwhile, this was too much for Whitey. Like, he's never seen aliens. He's never expected to see an alien. And honestly, he didn't know how much to believe.
Right.
He was actually kind of skeptical of Truman's story.
He's like, I give it a skeptical.
He voted skeptical, but he was still interested enough to kind of like play along. But he also bought in enough that when they walked in, he was like, whoa, is that her? So it was kind of on the forefront of his mind.
Give it viable.
He moved from skeptical to viable. But I think he hit believable at this moment because he decided to leave the diner and just chill in his truck. He didn't leave him.
Oh, wow.
He stayed in his truck, but he was like, I can't be in here. He had to run to his truck, lock the door, and just stared at the diner from inside his truck. So cut back to Truman at their table. He's standing there looking at them, sitting down, trying to be a gentleman and ease the tension. He says, I beg your pardon, lady, but haven't we met before? And Aura slowly looked up, glaring at him in what he claimed was a very hostile way, and only uttered a single word, no.
Damn.
Truman said it was a chilling, almost demonic tone.
Shot through the heart.
Startled, Truman walked back over to his table, which is now alone, because Whitey done ditched him. And he thought about it, and he acknowledged later that the man that Orr was with never even paid attention to him, almost as if he didn't even notice that Truman was there. But then the waitress came over to Truman, and she asked him if those two people were the saucer people. So it must have been getting out a little bit.
Jesus Christ. Those alien folks?
Is them there the aliens? I don't think that's how they speak in Nevada.
Oh, sure.
But Truman was like, yeah. Yeah, pretty much. He's like, I don't know if they have cash, so I wouldn't expect anything back in return.
Pay in antimatter.
No, but he said that he thought so initially, but maybe not, because apparently he was stuffed to death with her new get-up.
Oh, this is tears in his eyes?
But
I'm sorry, I'll stop.
She had sunglasses on, so maybe it was hard for him to tell. And I guess the man had a scar on his face, which wasn't like any of the aliens he saw when they materialized in front of the ship. But the waitress said, oh, I noticed that too. Oh, but that's not a scar. That's penciled on.
Like eyeline makeup.
Yeah. So this creepy small man whose only real distinguishable trait was a scar on his face. It wasn't even real. For some reason, this guy put a fake scar on his face. So Truman paid his check, and thinking about what the waitress said, he looked back, but when he glanced, the couple were gone. And he rushed out to Whitey, who was still in his truck, and he asked when they left, but Whitey said that no one had left the diner. That is the end of the first story.
Wow.
So our second encounter is 3 years later in 1955, and it involves Air Marshal Horsley.
Horsley. Okay.
Horsley. You know what? Horse, I'm not saying horse is a funny word, because it's not, in my opinion. I don't think horse is a funny word, but when we did Kelpies and we kept saying the word horse, I don't know why. It felt silly to me. I don't think it's inherently funny.
Okay.
And I think other people can say horse and it's not funny, but for some reason, like when we're trying to be serious, we're talking about like these creatures and we're like a horse. I don't know.
I haven't listened to the Kelpies in quite a while, so I don't really remember it.
I haven't listened to it since then. That's just something I've kept inside all these months. But now you know. But for the rest of this story, I'm going to call him Horsley. Horsley. So it's 1955, and Air Marshal Sir Bareford Peter Torrington Horsley.
What that's his whole name?
Oh man, it must have been half off when he was buying middle names.
Actually, you know what? Maybe he's Irish, because it's an Irish thing.
Well, he's a sir too, so he's,
Sir?
Sir Bareford. Is it B-E-R-E Ford?
Is he British?
Yeah.
Oh, so he's knighted.
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually kind of impressive.
Like Sir Elton John, right? He's knighted.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah,
same thing.
Sir Ian McKellen?
Yes.
Or Sir
Horsley.
Sir Gowan?
Sir Horsley.
Sir Horsley, okay. Alright, so this is in England.
Stories about Sir Horsley.
This is in the UK.
Yeah, this specific one is in the UK. And Horsley was involved in a very top secret investigation.
Very top secret, whatnot. Don't come knocking. We won't be a talking.
We're talking about aliens here. they're investigating this human-looking alien that was known as Mr. Janus.
Mr. Janus.
Are you familiar with Mr. Janus?
Mr. Janus. No.
And all this began, this whole story with Horsley, when he learned of Duke of Edinburgh's.
Edinburgh.
No, there's not borough, it's Burr.
No.
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh.
It's not Pittsburgh, but it's Edinburgh.
Edinburgh. Goddamn.
Duke of Edinburgh's fascination with UFOs and aliens. So, Horsley started to study aliens in his spare time. Get on the Wikipedia. And soon, Horsley was introduced to General Martin, who was trying to lead the way for him to make contact with this Mr. Janus. And at this point, this is kind of a bomb. Like, it's kind of a little baby bomb in this entire episode. General Martin just kind of slid this little factoid to him that a race of human-looking aliens have already infiltrated Earth and were secretly living amongst us.
And he said, what?
And you mind passing the tea.
Jesus Christ. You gotta slip that between, like, a statement, that, and then a question.
And one factor that Martin expressed to Horsley was that aliens were very concerned with our atomic arsenals.
I mean, me too. I still am.
I feel it. But of course, these things could be discussed with Mr. Janus. No need to talk about the disturbing details at the tea table.
Mr. Janus is coming.
Mr. Janus.
How ominous.
I know. However, before Horsley could have an official sit-down with Mr. Janus, he would have to meet Mrs. Markham first.
Mrs. Markham and Mr. Janus. Are they related? Are they friends?
No, they might be from the same planet, but...
Okay.
And it is Mrs., so he knows he can't work on that thing, you know. It's not Miss Markham, it's Mrs. Markham.
Okay.
So essentially, this high-ranking British official is diving into these sensitive topics, which is turned into alien hunting, but before he can speak to this potential human, half alien thing. Maybe it's all alien.
Could be hybrid. Could be hybrid.
Knows.
That's a thing.
It is a thing, but I don't know if this is that thing. It doesn't matter, because before that can happen, he has to shoot the breeze with Mrs. Markham. And so after they slurp down their tea, General Martin told Horsley to expect a visit from Mrs. Markham soon. Keep your schedule open. Don't leave the city. He didn't say that.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, Jesus. It's really ominous.
So, a few nights later, around 8 p.m., there was a loud knock on Horsley's door. She had arrived. He opened the door to find a woman dressed entirely in black, a thick black coat, black heels, black hair, and her skin was very, very pale. Almost vampire-like. Immediately he felt ill. His stomach just absolutely knots, but he knew to continue his research to meet Mr. Janus, he had to let her in, so in she went. She introduced herself as Mrs. Markham in a very emotionless and monotone way.
She's just British.
He got the impression that there was a good chance that this woman was not human. Almost immediately, just
That's really interesting. He's like, not one of me.
Not me. Unbelievable.
A predator, almost. Ooh, like a something eyeing a predator.
Ugh. That's bad, Gigi.
Yeah.
And she invited him to take a seat.
In his own house?
In his own house.
Damn.
And told him that she had the ability to arrange a meeting with him and Mr. Janus. And he tried to keep his calm, but he couldn't help notice that there was no friendly attitude, there was no smiling. This woman literally would not blink. There's no blinking. Just constant, emotionless, still. She warned him that Earth was in grave danger due to all of the atomic weapons that were being produced. And she told him to consider aiding in lessening the tension between superpowers on Earth and to work with a group of extraterrestrial aliens that wished to see every single atomic weapon disarmed. But Horsley, despite being freaked out, thinking he's talking to a woman that isn't even human, he gathered his courage and actually refuted her point. And he said, I see where you're coming from, but if we disarm everything, if every country, including us, if we all disarm our atomic weapons, that actually is leaving Earth vulnerable to potential attacks that could be greater than anything the Soviets had. And he said, upon this revelation, Mrs. Markham did not say anything, but this was the one and only time that she let out a little wry smile, as if she understood what he was implying. Which, just the context and undertone of that is just terrifying. Like, this alien telling you, like, one person has the ability to do it, but to just disarm all of your atomic weapons.
Yeah.
And then, and I wouldn't have had this revelation, but for him to have the sense of mind to say, well, if we do that, we're actually, instead of country versus country, we're setting the whole planet up in a very vulnerable state. And then for her just to smile. Yeah. That is creepy as shit.
Well, I wonder if she knows her plan, and that is to that's why she wants us to disarm. That's the planet is in danger. Why don't you just put your guns down?
Yeah. Well, it's hinted with a smile.
Yeah.
But the conversation ended, and Horsley agreed to meet with Dr. Janice. And very abruptly, Mrs. Markham got up and left into the darkness of the night. But later that evening, Horsley woke in a cold sweat to the sound of a woman's loud wailing that he said lasted about 15 or so seconds.
End story?
End of story. That's when the Women in Black ends. I think it goes more into Men in Black. There's actually I think there's more about Horsley with Mr. Janice, which could also be an episode.
I would love to hear that story.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Mrs. Markley was fantastic.
Yeah.
But I want to hear the continuation.
Yeah, it's probably all fake, so. Anyway, let's move on to 1967, our third encounter with Jane and Richard, 1967.
September 1978. Serial killer Rodney Alcala appears on The Dating Game.
February 1994. 34 hospital workers are exposed to an unexplained toxic lady.
March 2022. Experian emails a Los Angeles podcaster about a mysterious credit score change, completely unjustified.
Wait, did we cover that?
I mean, we could have. I said it was mysterious.
Okay, we're Ghost Town, and we cover true crime, paranormal, and other weird history.
The Cult of Capital One.
But here's one more date. July 2018. A trailer drops for a new podcast called Ghost Town. Over 300 episodes later, we've covered everything from the Los Feliz murder house to the Noid.
Ever hear of the Tetris murders or the Denver Spider-Man or the underground satanic magazine Tuesday's Child?
Didn't think so. We've got stories you won't hear anywhere else by two writers, producers, and comedians.
We're LA 4s, but Wisconsin 7s.
Hey, I'm from Wisconsin. Oh. I'm Rebecca Lieb.
I'm Jason Horton.
And this is Ghost Town.
Available every Wednesday and Friday.
Pause the podcast you're listening to right now and subscribe to Ghost Town.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
You're a Wisconsin 8.
This episode is sponsored by Magic Spoon.
Charlie, when I say think back to being a kid, what does it make you think of?
Saturday mornings watching cartoons with a big bowl of cereal.
Right? Wasn't that the best?
Well, to be honest, I still watch cartoons, but I gave up the cereal. Too much unnecessary sugars, you know?
What if there was a tasty cereal that was good for you and legitimately a healthy breakfast option?
What?
I'm talking about Magic Spoon.
Oh yeah, Magic Spoon, the ultimate childlike cereal.
But for adults.
We recommend checking out the variety pack that comes with 4 flavors: cocoa, fruity, frosted, and peanut butter.
This pack has 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs and only 140 calories per serving.
When I saw they had a peanut butter option, I immediately called dibs.
My favorite is cocoa, which you'll actually see us on social media eating, and honestly, I was floored by how good it actually is.
Exactly. It doesn't taste like cardboard like some of the other healthy cereals. You can't even tell. It's got 0 grams of sugar.
Listen, if you want to reclaim your childhood and enjoy a tasty, refreshing bowl of cereal with ice-cold milk, go to magicspoon.com/bizarre and grab a variety pack today.
And be sure to use our promo code BIZARRE at checkout to save $5 off your order.
Remember, get your delicious and healthy bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/bizarre and use the promo code BIZARRE to save $5 off your order. It's a chilly May evening. So it's May in 1967. So it's a long time ago. And Jane and Richard were driving around Huntington, New York. So they're just a young teenage couple killing time on a Saturday night. You know, there's no TikTok, there's no Netflix in the 60s.
No, but there's drive-through movies. Why not do that?
That's true. Maybe they didn't have money.
That could be.
You know. But they're driving, having a good time, whatever. It's May. It's 1967. And seemingly, out of nowhere, Richard became severely ill. And he managed to pull over on the side of the road. They're in a rural area. I don't know how rural Huntington is, but wherever they're at now is rural. Bunch of trees around. Kind of not a side road, but just not a highly traveled street. Pulled over. And he's not really sure what's wrong, but he just didn't want to keep driving. Jane's freaking out. She's worried about Richard. She doesn't know what to do. She wants to help. But almost as soon as Richard pulled off the side of the road, a blinding white light engulfed Jane, Richard, and their car. Jane had the inclination that the light was coming from deep inside the lush woods that were surrounding the car in the rural road, but it was so bright that it was hard for her to accurately tell. Jane felt completely frozen, unable to move a single muscle in her body. And then, within a flash, they found themselves driving along a different country road, a significant distance away from where they'd been stopped by where Richard's illness overtook him and where the penetrating light was.
Wow, that actually reminds me of Flatwood Monsters. The light in the woods.
That's true, because the creature kind of sent off a beam.
Yeah.
A flash light.
That's just my putting two and two together.
I got you. Jane and Richard obviously knew that something very strange happened, and they weren't able to discern exactly how much time they were missing. Because they don't know how they got on that street. They both had the same shared experience, but they didn't know, like, how long they were gone.
There was no clocks in the car?
It wasn't, apparently not.
Okay, just asking.
There was another episode we did, Pascagoula. Where they didn't know the time.
That's true.
In the car.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they have no idea how much time they lost, how they got there, what happened. They just know that something really crazy happened. A few days later, after the horrifying incident, Jane received a disturbing phone call. When she picked up her phone, she heard a mysterious voice on the other end of the line. She never identified herself to Jane, but in a very robotic, monotone fashion, she instructed Jane to visit her local library to ask for a specific book on Native American history when she gets there, and then to turn to page 42. So it's like it's like a hunt, like a treasure hunt. Is how it feels to me. And she was told to read that specific page 42, very, very carefully. And that was the end of the phone call. Hang up, donezo. Naturally, given everything that she'd been through, Jane was confused and a little more nervous about the whole thing, but she couldn't stifle her curiosity. She felt oddly drawn to the woman's request. So, the next morning, she headed to her local library. And Jane wasn't somebody who frequented the library, but upon her arrival, she said it felt different. And not just for the reasons why she was there, beyond that whole stuff. She said there was a stillness and like an emptiness at the library. Like it was just like being in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. No motion, no sound. There was no one else in there. It was literally just Jane and the librarian, who was dressed very oddly, according to Jane. She had long, dark black hair. She had a fully black outfit, like an old-fashioned suit with flat black shoes. And whatever this means, she said her demeanor seemed very cold and distant. But without saying a word, as soon as Jane walked into the library, the librarian stood up and handed Jane the exact Native American book that she was intended to look for. Jane could feel her heart beating out of her chest, but she'd come this far, she couldn't turn back now, despite being ridiculously freaked out. So she found a table, she sat down, and took a deep breath and immediately flipped to page 42. As she did, the writing changed on the page from large to small text and then back to large. And then, almost magically, the text itself morphed into a completely different message that was specifically intended for Jane. She later said that she assumes that what she read, was actually put into her head by the woman in black. It wasn't truly what was in the book. But she wrote it down. This is word for word what she claims was on page 42. Quote, Good morning,
friend. You have been selected for many reasons. One is that you are advanced in auto-suggestion. Through this science, we will make contact. I have messages concerning Earth and its people. The time is sent. Fear not, I am a friend. For reasons best known to ourselves, you must make your contacts known to one reliable person. To break this code is to break contact. Proof shall be given. Notes must be kept out of the suggestion state. Be in peace.
Unquote. So again, she wrote the message down so she wouldn't forget, blinked, closed the book, completely in shock. And she looked up, and the woman in black was nowhere to be seen. And without that librarian, without that presence of the other woman, it was almost like this calmness dissipated. It was like this trance was broken, and everything that happened, everything she felt, everything that brought her there kind of like rushed back into her, and she fled the library in absolute terror. By the way, I just want to shout this out. Autosuggestion is a psychological technique where people can kind of conduct self-hypnosis. I think what it means, what the librarian, the woman in black, was trying to say is that you're the most susceptible to receive the messages that we're trying to send. Mm-hmm. Almost, I think, maybe not in the same vein, but how some people are more sensitive than others. Like, I don't think I'm very sensitive. You are way more sensitive than I am. There's people more sensitive than both of us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But back to the story. Shortly after this library experience with this woman in black, Jane fell ill, very similar to Richard, with pains, aches, and sickness. She was vomiting and developed a fever. But once the sickness started going away and Jane started feeling better, she started obviously going out and about again, going about her normal errands and chores and whatnot. But something odd started happening. She started noticing the same woman in black, the librarian, in various locations. One day at a gas station, while her car was getting pumped full of gas, Jane looked over and she saw that woman in black. Fearful, but still trying to be polite, she gave the woman a small nod in acknowledgement. The woman didn't respond at all. She just stared at her with what Jane described as a menacing, murderous smile. The next day, Jane saw the woman in black in a convenience store. This time, she tried to engage Jane in conversation, but it was a very stilted, broken form of English in general communication. One other odd aspect of seeing this woman was that the way that she moved was very irregular. It was very jerky motions, her steps were off balance, and she wasn't making any sense. In Jane's words, it was almost as if she was a zombie. Literally anything but human. And it's
a little gray in a suit. Like it's still... Sorry, I had to give some levity for myself. It was really freaking me out.
And Jane asked the woman, just to kind of break the tension, if she lived locally, because I think she was expecting something about being the librarian. But she didn't answer. The only response that she got was a loud, wailing, hysterical laugh.
Oh.
And that is Jane's story.
Jesus Christ. That was so scary.
Yeah, that one dude, you can see why I'm getting freaked out researching this shit.
I don't like that one.
I was reading this shit at 1 a.m, dude. Freaking the fuck out. Especially, and I'm not trying to make it seem like what we're doing is bigger than this shit, but we're literally researching the shit. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, we're putting it out there. Scary shit. Okay. Moving on to story 4. This is Colin Perks. It takes place in the 2000s. We're moving it up. These next 2 stories are quotes. The other 2 were more like telling their story. Mm-hmm. These ones are kind of like more of our typical personal encounter vein, where I'm going to be reading these encounters.
Gotcha.
Quote, Colin Perks has always been fascinated with the legends behind the fabled King Arthur of Britain. He first became enamored with the folkloric figure when he was a child and grew up to possess an astoundingly large library of Arthurian literature by the time he reached his 30s. However, Colin's research eventually took him on a mission to find the burial site of this once living legend. He decided that this was possible to find based on a series of complex codes that he was given by a fellow Arthurian researcher in 1978. Perks came to the conclusion that Arthur's grave must have been somewhere near the old English town of Glastonbury. In the fall of 2000, he traveled to this town to begin his investigation. But not long after his adventure started, Perks' phone rang late one evening. He picked up the phone and was greeted by a female voice who insisted that they discuss his Arthurian studies. There was something disturbing about this unknown woman, but he eventually agreed to meet her at 7 p.m. in a few days' time. At the arranged time, Perks was frightened, but not shocked to hear a knock on the front door. He took a deep breath and nervously opened the door, where he was confronted by the female figure responsible for the previous phone call. She was described as a beautiful woman, around 35 or 40 years old, in a smart and expensive-looking black outfit. She had long black hair and pale, smooth skin that seemed to glimmer under the moonlight. For a moment there was silence. As Perks stood before her like a deer in headlights, the woman's face was completely devoid of any emotion. However, Perks could somehow sense an air of hostility or maybe even hatred coming from her. She introduced herself as Sarah Key and said that she and her select group of people within the British ruling elite had been watching Perks for a long time. She made it abundantly clear that the purpose of her visit was to request that Perks cease his Arthurian studies immediately. Dumbfounded, but suddenly defensive, he told her no, he wasn't going to stop his research, and he scoffed at the idea that there were shadowy figures watching his every move. It seemed like something out of a thriller movie as opposed to anything one might expect to encounter while researching King Arthur. His skepticism was quickly put to bed, however, when Sarah Key responded to his jeering by listing off everything he had done in recent memory, right down to which local pubs he would visit for dinner and his pint of Guinness. Colin, now listening in stunned silence, was further bewildered when Key described how Arthur's gravesite had been built atop some sort of portal or supernatural gateway, and claimed that the chamber had been constructed as a defense system to prevent monsters from alternate dimensions from entering our reality and wreaking havoc. Apparently, Colin's research may have had innocent intentions, but it could potentially result in paranormal catastrophe if it went any further. The woman's expression became grimmer, and her tone somehow even more menacing, as she stated that Perks had made a big mistake by continuing to research, and that he'd be destined to receive another visit from someone else if he continued. Roughly 2 months later, this visit would come to pass in terrifying fashion. Perks was driving down a small and winding road from the city of Bath back to Glastonbury, where he approached an area of the road that was devoid of any traffic or illumination. He was already going slow due to the twisty nature of the road, only moving around 25 miles per hour, so he was luckily able to apply the brakes quickly when a horrific figure suddenly appeared in the middle of the road in front of him. This dark, humanoid figure had bat-like wings and red eyes blazing with supernatural light. Utterly terrified, Perks immediately hit the accelerator with every intention of running down this monstrous gargoyle. But the demonic creature vanished before it was hit by the speeding vehicle. About a week later, the gargoyle made another appearance. Perks was woken up in the middle of the night by a sensation of pure terror. He was paralyzed in his bed, and monstrous hands were tightly gripped around his wrists, and this gargoyle was looming over him, its red eyes aflame in the darkened bedroom. a message appeared in Colin's mind, once again warning him to stay away from the grave of King Arthur and to stop digging in the woods. Immediately after, the gargoyle vanished, leaving Perks unsure if the visitation was just a horrific nightmare or if it was real, but deep down, he knew it wasn't just a nightmare. Unquote.
Homie tried to run over Mothman.
Whew, dude, there's some twists and turns in that story.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
Could you imagine that, like, you're digging for something just to find it, right? Like, like it's nothing, like, I don't think he had bad intentions. I think it's almost like any type of explorer.
No, right, he was in love with Arthurian legends, and, like, I get it, like.
And then this woman in black comes to you and is like, this place that you're trying to seek is a portal to a supernatural dimension, and if you mess around with it, then these monsters are going to come into our dimension.
Right. She's like, you're going to fuck around and find out.
Now that's like Stranger Things. All right. This is our 5th and final encounter. It takes place in Tampa. Don't know the year, but I think it was recently. Oof. It's from Mysterious Universe. Are you ready? It's another quote.
Yeah.
It's the first person. It's like a real personal encounter.
Tampa, Florida.
With a woman in black.
Okay. Yeah. It'd be kind of weird if you switched up the
the topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We're doing the Alaskan bullworm.
I just watched that today.
It is big, scary, and
pink.
I didn't know that. I had to squeeze some SpongeBob.
What if you just push it somewhere else?
Quote. Are you ready?
Yes.
Quote. I worked as a bar manager at a sports bar in Tampa, Florida, and at 2 a.m., I cashed out the servers and sent them home, and I closed down the kitchen. Sad time, worst time of the day. That was me. The bar closed at 3 a.m., but my last few barflies stumbled out before 2:30. I closed out the credit cards, counted the register, abused my free credits on the jukebox, and sat down to wait out the clock. At about 10 minutes to 3, a couple walked in. I told them it was last call and cash only at this point, and locked the doors behind them, not really paying attention to them. Rude, yes, I know, but after 12 hours, give me a break. But when I did notice them, I began to feel uneasy. Neither one of them sat down on the stools in front of the bar. They each ordered a non-alcoholic beer and just stood there holding their drinks about 2 stools apart. And then I noticed how they were dressed. The man, who appeared older than the woman, maybe about 40-ish, wore a black double-breasted suit of an outdated cut. I'd say maybe 1950s style, with a rumpled black shirt and a crooked black tie. I'd say he was about 5'9", thin build. He had incredibly pale skin that showed blue veins underneath. He had thin, dry, unhealthy-looking gray hair pulled back in a ponytail with seemingly random dark brown patches in it. The woman was about 5'6" and looked about mid-20s, wore a black evening gown with elbow-length satin gloves and a clashing bright green knit shawl around her shoulders. She had a short bob haircut with bangs, though it actually kind of looked like a poorly cared for wig. She had the same high forehead, cheekbones, and blue eyes as her partner, although her eyes were more narrow and slightly slanted. Neither one of them had eyebrows. As I started cleaning up behind the bar, the woman began clearing her throat impatiently, so I walked over to see what they wanted. That's when I noticed the stench coming from this woman. Not only did she smell like she hadn't bathed in a month, she also smelled oddly of chemicals. I used to apprentice as an embalmer, and I swear that woman smelled just like formalin. When I walked over, the man beckoned me to him and placed a leather satchel on the bar, from which he removed several photographs and asked me if I knew any of the subjects in those pictures. I decided that I'd humor him. Part of me suspected that maybe this was a police investigation, but when I looked at the pictures, I became truly terrified. Some of the people in these photographs were my friends. Most of the photos looked candid and snapped from hiding, and some of them bore timestamps and were obviously stills from TV footage. As I looked over the photos, She kept staring and grinning at me. I had the feeling that even though this man was talking, somehow she was the one in charge. I have no idea why I knew this, but I swear I did. I feigned ignorance and I told them I had no idea who those people were and that I was closing, so they needed to leave. Mind you, they never sat down during this entire time. They both grinned at me like they knew I was lying. The man unlocked the door and both quietly walked out. They hadn't even taken a sip from their beers. The whole experience seemed dreamlike to me, and I almost wanted to believe that I was hallucinating it. Remember how I said I abused my free credits on the jukebox? Well, once the two left, I realized the juke was dead. And I even remember what bands were playing before the two walked in. Iron Maiden, followed by the Banshees. That particular model of jukebox cannot be shut off by the remote. It would literally only die in the event of a power outage or if it had been unplugged. It was still plugged in, and there was no power outage that had occurred. The bar closed 2 months later, and I never saw the two again. However, I did contact my former assistant manager and one server I kept in contact with, and I asked them as nonchalantly as I could if they ever experienced any odd occurrences involving black cars, strange people, or odd phone calls, and I didn't tell them why I was asking. Neither I or they had experiences with black cars, which is a huge men in black, woman in black phenomenon, but they both told me that someone kept calling the bar on my nights off, asking for me by my full name. These calls only occurred in the 2 weeks prior to my encounter with these two people. No one outside my family, close friends, even my lawyer know my middle name. It's not even on my social security card. Both the assistant manager and the server told me that they said I wasn't working that night, and the voice on the other end, always female, would giggle and then hang up. Unquote.
It's a creepy story.
The jukebox, like the power outage. Oh, there was something else that drew my attention to the story.
Pictures of his friends?
Yeah, like a can did. Yeah. Like they were hiding in bushes behind trees. That's like so creepy.
The smell is what gets me.
Ugh. Like the chemical-ish. Yeah. Ugh. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that is our story. Let's move to the discussion. So now is the time that we like to thank our patrons. That is where we have all of our bonus, extra content.
That's right. You hear that music going, you know what time it is.
You know what time it is. So as of this moment, as of the recording of this episode, we'd like to thank our newest patrons, which include Bree, Olivia, Bella, Donnie, Carla, Adrian, Haley, and Sela. And also, I want to give a huge shout out to one of our younger listeners, Kyron.
Thank you so much, Kyron.
Kyron, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being a Bizarro. You're awesome. Your mom is awesome. We appreciate you listening, seriously. Charlie, tell the great listeners of Believing the Bizarre what kind of content they can expect should they choose to sign up for our Patreon.
Well, if you're listening to this episode right now, on our Patreon at the mid-tier, there is a quiz that goes along with this very topic, and I think the quizzes are probably one of our most entertaining things that we do. But there is now a new thing coming out, Bizarre News, which is mostly Tyler, presents strange stories that happen throughout the world. We're not going to talk about it here, but in the Patreon, we get into details, and we talk about it with producer Ben, and we go over that stuff, and we also have Do You Believe the Bizarre? Director's cuts. There's a whole lot of stuff. I'm not going to go through
listener submission interviews.
Yes.
You get a free shirt that you can only get by being a dedicated tier member. Google Hangouts, where we literally just sit and chat on Google. We watch movies together. Tons of stuff. We put a lot of effort into it. We love doing it. A lot of bonus content. Literally, if you join now, you have a year's worth of extra bonus content.
That's a lot of stuff.
So if you're ever walking your dog on a flight, the flights are when I really catch up on podcasts because I've been traveling more lately. But, if you find yourself like, man, I need more podcast content, there you go.
Yeah, if you're all cut up on all Believing the Bizarre, that's a great place to turn.
Absolutely. But I'm so excited to hear Charlie's opinions on this topic, so let's get to the discussion. All right, dude. I threw a lot at you. Obviously, I know you're knowledgeable about Men in Black. I know you have that knowledge. Who was I talking to? No, I do. Well, I talked to Ben, producer Ben, about this. I think it was my best friend Tyler. I think he didn't know that this was a real thing. Like he knew Men in Black was the movies, but didn't know like it was a real phenomenon.
I mean, to be fair, I didn't know it was a real thing. Probably
at the time of the movies, no.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
I remember, and so the movie came out in 95, so I was like 3.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was in high school that I picked up a book, and it was talking about the real Men in Black, and I was like, what?
See, I didn't even know that until after college.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't even know about the Men in Black until like a year after I graduated college.
It's one of those things where they take a very creepy, serious thing and just make it so silly.
And make it one of the best movies ever.
Yeah. It's raining black people in
There's
New York.
really good quotes. That's probably not one of the better ones, but they're really good quotes.
Will Smith says it. It's hilarious when he's on the double-decker bus.
Yeah.
I think that's the second movie. I think that's the second time I've done that.
That's the first movie.
Thank God.
That's the first movie.
That's the second time I've done that.
Because it's the beginning of the first movie.
Anyway, you know about this topic. You know it's popular. But now we're going into the women in black. What are your thoughts on, before we get to the specifics of like the stories, what are your thoughts just in general?
Okay. So, first thought that comes to mind is femme fatale. Second thought is, sometimes, like in hyenas, the more powerful of the sex is the female. And the reason I mention that is because of the last story, where the guy's talking about the woman's in charge. And the idea of predatory came to mind as well. And I could see that with all of these. How many times did you say murderous intention or murderous thoughts or
in various different
smiles?
ways? Yeah.
And that's scary to me in a way that I cannot express.
It's interesting how multiple times it's like to get to where you want to go. It's like the first encounter is whatever paranormal thing happens to you. But then it's like you have to see the woman in black first.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it seems like such, like almost trance-like. It's not like seeing a ghost. When you see a ghost, you know you saw a ghost, or you start questioning it and you're like, that was terrifying. But like this encounter, it's somewhere, it's almost like the uncanny valley, like when you talk about robots, where it doesn't immediately set you off as something's wrong. Cause it could just be, I don't want to say like a weirdo, but it could be somebody just strange. It could just be a strange person. Mm-hmm. But then the more you interact with them, the more you know. Like the one lady on the phone said, pick up this book, go to page 42, something creepy's going to happen. This last story, this person had photographs, candid photographs, and knew his middle name when he didn't tell anybody his middle name, there's just like this like feeling of like, oh no, I've let this thing in. How can I protect myself? I think I'm in a lot of trouble. It would be, okay, this is very grandiose thinking, because honestly, we're not that we're less than somebody who saw a UFO, but it feels, I feel like there's too much ego to even assume that this could happen. But what would you do, seriously, if you got contacted and they were like, stop the podcast?
I'd be sad at first. I'd be like, I would probably talk back. Like, what do you mean? I would probably push. I'd be like, why would you say that? And then, and then I'd probably call you and be like, this is probably a prank, right? Like, this is probably a prank.
And then Charlie gives me his 2 weeks. That would be...
I don't know why that's so funny to me.
That would be... But okay, like, it feels irrational. But when you're afraid, it's not always rational. And I think, not that somebody would tell me to stop doing the podcast, but I think that was part of my irrational fear while digging into this.
Because you were doing research into this thing that they probably don't want you to do.
And there's plenty of paranormal podcasts. Y'all know there's plenty of paranormal podcasts.
There's a lot out there.
A lot of people out there. So I'm not trying to say that there's any reason we would be drawing that type of attention. But when it's 2 a.m, you're tired, you're diving headfirst into this stuff. You're not in the right state of mind.
Not thinking.
You got a window right next to you. It's a completely pitch black room. Mm-hmm. It's like, it is just creeping into my head. Yeah. That's like, as I'm doing this, as I'm writing it down, as I'm kind of like putting myself in these stories, it's like we were saying, like, what if I just look out the window? You know what I mean? God. I was freaking myself out. Yeah. But it's kind of just a crazy what if scenario.
I feel like I'd be doing that research with my gun next to me, probably.
A little pew pew? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we owe it to y'all that we wouldn't stop, but if we die, that's kind of on you guys.
It is a little
I'm not
bit.
saying you guys should take blame or
And maybe send flowers.
yeah, that would be kind of the least y'all could do. Or join the Patreon. It wouldn't matter at that point. Producer Ben would be like, yeah, yep.
He's like, yeah, definitely join the
You should
Patreon.
probably do that. What story stood out to you the most?
The last one.
Yeah?
The last one.
Is that recency bias?
No.
Okay.
No. The description. Description for sure.
I really like the librarian one. And I also
I don't like that one either.
that one because it has that like very concrete UFO experience, like the bright light. Like it's like this is all about the women in black, which are obviously very closely tied to UFOs and alien encounters.
Mhm.
And the first one literally started with an alien encounter, which if that story is true, it pretty much is saying women in black are aliens.
Yeah.
Because Aura reigns.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved that UFO moment. It was like very quick, very fleeting, but just pull over
Something.
in pain. Don't like that he was in pain,
Yeah.
but but then this blinding light, and then all of a sudden they're driving on a different road.
Mhm.
Reminds me of the
Flatwoods. No.
the story. Where were we talking about the story?
The back rooms.
Yes,
Beginning.
Yes, it reminds me of the back rooms where they lost that hour. Right? Is that where that was?
Mhm. We just did it.
That was the back rooms.
That was the beginning. That was a Matrix thing.
The Matrix thing. Yes. Okay, but
Like,
you said it was aliens.
It's,
And
I said it might.
it felt more like it was aliens than Matrix thing. I'm like,
Listen,
well, that doesn't fit in the back rooms.
It is so hot in here, but I wish I had a hoodie on right now just to protect my neck.
Yeah.
It's
What other details, thoughts? What do you believe this? You said Men in Black were aliens at the top of the episode.
yeah,
Do you think they are also aliens?
absolutely.
Is there any other type of entity you think this could be? Because some people think it's like vampires. Some people think it's multi-dimensional beings. Some people think it's time travelers.
No, I think it's aliens. That's what makes the most sense to me right now. But
Yeah.
looking back, things could change. But that's how I feel right now. I feel like it's an alien protecting its interest or something like that.
That was another detail. The alien, the woman in black telling him to
Put down your nukes.
Yeah, like try and convince. Like one guy has all the power to be
No,
like,
but you're-
everybody, put your atomic weapons down.
No, but you're
put the
building
safety on.
those things into multiple people, assuming they're seeing multiple people,
Yeah,
building that kind of like, it's a threat, your world's in danger, put down your guns.
yeah. And just that's perfect. Like it's so creepy that him coming to the realization, which I give him props in the moment, to be like, well, if we do that, then we're leaving the entire planet vulnerable to potentially outside attacks, and just that like no response, just that little smile, like,
It's like, How ballsy though.
oh, dude, like I bet okay. Like, even if I had no intention
Yes,
of
mom.
telling, yeah, like whatever you say. And I feel bad. I don't mean to tease y'all with the Mr. Janice thing. I truly believe, like, there's 3 episodes coming from this. There's gonna be a Mr. Janice episode where it goes further into going past the lady.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a Men in Black episode, and I truly believe there's gonna be a Women in Black part 2. Because I'm only like halfway through the book that I got to research this, and I know there's more stories. So, if y'all like this, let us know, and we'll definitely do a part 2. But Charlie, you have 5 encounters, you have background into the Women in Black, you know about the Men in Black. Where do you rate this on the believability scale? Because that's what we do here. We take a topic, we tell the story, and we discuss it, and then we rate it on a scale as either believable, viable, skeptical, or unbelievable, because we know Spotify has our back. And if you're listening and you're a new person right now, you're probably on Spotify. So thank you, Spotify, not a sponsor. But Charlie, where do you land on the scale?
I think I'm gonna go believable. I believe him. I believe it. Maybe that means hopefully they'll be a little bit less likely to come by me.
Or more likely.
I don't know. I'm hoping it's the latter, not the former.
If there's a woman in black listening on this, I guarantee you're on Spotify. She's like, I'm actually on Stitcher.
I know, right? The one person on Stitcher. Not even a person.
We get a review on Apple is like listed as the woman in black. Like, totally don't believe him.
So where do you land?
I think viable.
Okay. Good.
It's real enough in my head that it was legitimately creeping me out. Not that that should be like the marker for whether or not something's real, whether I get scared.
Yeah.
But I think to get scared is to give it some credence, in your words, from like 100 episodes ago.
But I believe in aliens.
That's true.
I believe in aliens, like I do. And I don't know if I believe, like I guess I give it believable, but it's something, like you said, it scares me so much, the thought of it.
Yeah.
I don't want it to happen to me. Does that give it believable, though? Yes, it does, because I think it can happen.
Yeah. It's funny if I give them viable and then I give Men in Black, oh, it's believable.
That's the 79 cents to $1 right there.
I will say that there's not as much information about the Women in Black, and that doesn't make it less believable, but I'm literally trusting two sources with all this information. Mm-hmm. And neither of it's Wikipedia or Reddit, so I'm honestly a little skeptical. Or Ranker. But I want to learn more. I definitely think it falls in line with the Men in Black. It's super creepy. I give it a viable. So that is our episode on the Women in Black. I'm freaked out. You're freaked out. Hopefully you, the audience, is at least a little freaked out. There was five opportunities to be freaked out. So
there's some pretty good ones.
If you didn't get creeped out, that's kind of on you.
It's on you.
But seriously, thank you everybody so much for listening. If you're feeling it in your chest, if you're feeling it in your gut, if you're feeling it in your heart, go to Apple Podcast and leave us a 5-star review and type out some words that make you feel good, that make us feel good. We'll check it out. We'll post on Instagram. But if you're not listening on Apple and you are part of the 80% that listen on Spotify, all you got to do is hit that little 5-star. That's it.
Just
5-star.
And we super appreciate that.
We're almost at 1,000 Spotify reviews, which is awesome. We appreciate you. We appreciate everyone listening. And the reviews are fun, though. We like seeing the reviews.
Yeah. I do want to clarify a little point I said earlier about the Italians being from space thing. Like, that's not what I meant. I just meant that they were short because I'm half Italian. And I am, when I go to my family reunion, I am quite literally at 5'7", the tallest person in the room.
Well, you're 5'8", I think.
No, I am not.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm 5'7", maybe 5'7.5".
Yeah, because I'm 5'7", and you're like a little bit.
A little bit. But yeah, quite literally the tallest in the area.
But tell them what's happening tomorrow. And this is only relevant if you're listening to it the day this drops.
Yeah, so I'm going to be starting... I used to do it, but I'm going to get back into it because I'm on summer vacation.
Smoking
as a teacher.
cigarettes.
No, I'm not doing that. But as a teacher, I'm on summer break. So on my summer break, I'm going to stream on Twitch.
And tell them, I'm so excited. Tell them what game you're going to start out playing.
First game I'm going to play, honestly, probably not for that long because I'm going to get freaked out. I'm going to play Slender.
Yes, this game is old. Yes, it's like 10 years old as of this year. But you do not want to miss Charlie's reaction because I would be afraid to play. I'll be honest. I would be terrified to play. I played Dead Space. I would be terrified to play this. Charlie's reactions are literally going to be worth it. So go to our link tree, our link in our bio, and subscribe to our Twitch so you don't miss out. But it's going to be Wednesday. Do you know what time? Eastern?
I hadn't planned it yet. Probably 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock-ish?
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll definitely be watching. And hopefully I'll be there for a few of them.
I hope so. I'm going to need some emotional support. So
yes, I cannot wait. So check us out on Twitch. If you are a patron, which, in addition to all the bonus content we discussed earlier, if you're a patron, as Charlie starts developing more games in his Twitch, patrons can play with Charlie.
That's true.
But everybody can watch. Everybody can watch and join in and chat and watch him be terrified and cry and scream.
And laugh and have a good time and make fun of me.
It's going to be excellent.
Like, oh, what a crybaby.
But seriously, thank you everybody so much for listening, so much for the engagement. We hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, I'm Tyler.
And I'm Charlie.
And catch us next week on Believing the Bizarre
podcast, as bizarre as you are.
All right.
I got that feeling of like being watched or...
I know. I didn't like it. I didn't get it now because I'm trying to entertain.
Yeah.
But writing it down and researching it, dude. I almost said the Black-Eyed Women's. Like, cut that.